painting friends, it's Stoof here. Welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to do a plein air painting of Crystal Cove State Park in Laguna Beach, California. That's where I am today. It is a beautiful day and I just did this painting in about 1 hour, so I'm going to show the painting process to you right now. While you're here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my fun painting tutorials and painting adventures like this one. Hey painting friends, sorry for that loud wind noise there. I wanted to give you an introduction and it was very windy and I did not have my microphone with me when I was outside, so sorry for that. But now we're back in the studio with some silence, no wind, and I have my microphone. So here to talk about my plein air painting today that I made at Crystal Cove State Park in Laguna Beach, California. I gave myself 1 hour to complete this oil painting study. I'm working on an 8-inch by 10-inch canvas panel. We're using oil paint today. My colors list is in the description under this video if you're interested in seeing what colors I used. And I only used one paintbrush for this entire painting. I thought about switching it up and using a liner brush when I was getting closer to being done with it, but I figured I would just keep the looser brush strokes with the larger number 6 flat tip brush, and that's what I worked with the entire painting. To get started, I put my paints down on my palette. I got my little viewfinder out. I have these viewfinders that I use for plein air painting. You can set it to the dimensions of your canvas and look through the viewfinder to determine your layout for the painting, basically what is going to fit in your scene for the painting. I have a link for these viewfinders in the description under this video as well if you're interested in purchasing one of these. I also have my favorite materials list in the description if you're looking into ordering any plein air painting supplies if you want to give plein air painting a try. I'm looking through the viewfinder and determining where everything is going to be. I see that the horizon line in the far distance is very close to the top of the canvas. That's where I want to place it. I'm trying to show more of the sand and hilly slopes on the right side of the canvas. And here I want to have more of the ground taking up the space here and less sky taking up space. So I'm just looking through that viewfinder, determining where everything needs to be. Angles and lines are the first thing that I sketch out. As you can see, it was really windy this entire time. After I finished getting the general sketch of the concept down, I start to fill in things farthest in the distance and kind of work your way up to the foreground, starting with the sky. To get that color for the sky, I mixed some ultramarine blue with Prussian blue and white. Also like a tiny hint of phthalo green, and that gives you that nice sky we have. And after I got the sky, I wanted to add a couple clouds in the sky, so I mixed a little bit of flesh tint with some ultramarine blue, a hint of Prussian, a hint of umber with white to get the shadowy part for the clouds, and then just some pure white for the top parts, like the highlight part of the clouds. And the clouds are pretty subtle here, so I just went back and forth with the brush stroke and kind of let those clouds blend in with the background sky a little bit, just to keep them very subtle. When I was happy with the way the sky looked, I started to work on the land farthest in the distance there. You can see some buildings and a little bit of the city way far out there, but with this level of detail, I wasn't including any buildings in the painting. I kept a lighter color for this far background strip of land that was visible. I mixed a little Naples yellow, a little flesh tint, a little bit of sap green with my sky blue color, maybe a hint of purple in there as well, trying to keep it lighter in value to help show the depth and dimension in the painting. We have some trees that are a little bit darker in value and a little cooler coming up into the right side of the painting there. And once I got that background bit of land in, I started to add the water. For the water, I mixed Prussian blue, dioxazine purple, some phthalo green, little ultramarine blue in there as well, little umber, a little bit of white. And for some sections, the water is lighter, a little bit more purple. Some sections, it's darker, a little more blue, a little bit more green. So I'm having little subtle variations of these colors and values throughout the water. The water closest to the shore has more purple and ochre type colors in there, more like neutral yellows and browns. And the water farther on the left side of the canvas and in the distance has more blues and purples. It's a little darker in value. The water at the very far back horizon line fades out a little bit. It's not a perfect solid line because our eye tends to make it look fuzzy back there, so I just went back and forth at that far horizon line so it would blend a little with the sky color and make it a little bit less dramatic or harsh of a line in the far distance. I put some white down for where we have some breaking waves along the shore. The waves were really intense today. I was actually supposed to go to the Channel Islands National Park a couple hours north of here, but they canceled my boat ride because the waves were too big today. So that is why I came here to paint. This was a great plan B for the day. I was very happy at the end of the day. I'm continuing to work on the land here. We have the slopes, the hillsides. I'm trying to get that blocked in. We have a lot of Naples yellow in there. I'm also mixing white with cadmium yellow light and burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre in there, and that's giving me that warm yellow color along the cliffs, or not quite cliffs, but like the hillside, I guess. I guess they're kind of like cliffs. And then we have a little bit of like purple and brown and ultramarine blue mixed in there as well for the little subtle shadows in the rocky section, the hillsides. Some of the vegetation back there has more purple, a little bit of green, a little ultramarine blue. For the dry sand, I used that mix of Naples yellow, white, a little bit of burnt sienna and cadmium yellow light, maybe a hint of flesh tint in there as well, or like a portrait color, portrait pink. And then for the wet sand, I mixed in more dioxazine purple, burnt umber, alizarin crimson. I started to block in the vegetation closest to the foreground next, using more purple and umbers for those colors, also using more sap green in some of the plants there. Then I jump back over to blocking in more of the water. This section of the water is more turbulent. You can see a little bit more of the yellows and browns in the water here, so I included a little bit more of those colors in there, a little bit more phthalo green as well. The trickiest part of this painting for me was trying to block in the rocks on the shore using this paintbrush. I think if I would have used the liner brush for these rocks, that would have made them come out a little bit more precise, but it still fits well, it still reads well with the rest of the detail in this painting, the way that I use this number 6 flat tip brush for the rocks, so I am happy with the way it turned out. For the rocks, we have that really deep, dark, burnt umber mixed with ultramarine blue, cool brown color for the wet rocks in the water, and then the rocks that are dry or more on the beach, we have basically the same color as the sand, just including a little bit more burnt sienna and maybe a hint of crimson as well, so they stand out a bit more from the sand. There's also a really beautiful purple blue color in between the rocks where there are some rocks under the water. That's the color that we see. And I tried to capture that well using this brush, and it's tough to get it in between those little rocky spots there. If I were to do another painting of this spot, I would probably just do one like zoomed in on the rocky part there, because that was so beautiful and colorful. Going back again, cleaning off the brush with a little linseed oil and a paper towel, and then going in with the white, more breaking waves on the water, starting to add some breaking waves right behind the rocks so that we can see that those rocks are stopping the waves and causing them to crash and break. Once I finished working on the ocean, I made my way back into the foreground and the vegetation and rocks along the right side of the canvas. This was a tricky part of the painting for me because they were perceived to be a very similar color to the rocks behind them and the shore. All of the rocky colors and sediment sand colors were very similar. So the way that I tried to separate those is by including a little bit more red and purple in the rocks closest to me, and using a little bit more of like the yellows and mixing in hints of blue for the rocks farthest in the distance. Just trying to get a little bit more of those red colors in the rock closer to me. And you do perceive it that way, it's just so subtle that it's hard to tell. So I boosted that a little bit just to get the rock units to kind of all stand out from each other a little bit more in the painting. The contrast between shadow and highlight is also a little bit more intense in the foreground than it is farther in the distance. So I used some umber with ultramarine blue, a little bit of purple to create like a neutral dark color for some of the shadows and crevices in the rock and sediment along the shore. Also using more like sap green with my ultramarine blue, a little bit of crimson for the shadowy parts of the brush that we have here. For some of the highlights on the brush, I have like a gold green, more sap green, white with cadmium yellow light and sap green, just trying to build up those highlights a bit more. Because I'm doing plein air painting, I didn't want to overdo it with the paint and get things to be too mucky. So I am keeping things pretty generic here, not going too crazy with the contrast and not like trying not to oversaturate the painting with oil paint. I'm letting it sit after I get a general shadow and a general highlight, and then my plan is to take this painting back to my studio and boost up that contrast between light and dark in the foreground a little bit more, just to get that foreground to pull closer to the viewer and push everything else a little farther back in the distance. And then I also have a plan to make a little bit of a minor adjustment to the angle of the wave on the lower left, just to show that that wave is coming a little bit down closer to the viewer. Other than that, I'm not going to touch this painting in the studio, just making those couple minor adjustments for me to call it a completed painting. After the painting is totally covered with paint, I don't see any more white spots, I've addressed every single part of this canvas, I just step back for a second, take another look at everything, and decide to make a few more minor adjustments, try to get things to stand out a little more from each other so it's not just all blended in together. I'm also taking a look at the colors and values I have on the canvas and seeing if that is true to what I'm perceiving in nature right in front of me. That's one of the great things about plein air painting, is color matching exactly what you see in real life. And then once I'm happy with the way everything looks, I call it a finished painting. I put that paintbrush down, and then I get some selfies with my finished painting. Hey painting friends! This wraps up my video on plein air painting in Laguna Beach, California. As you can see, it was a very windy day. The waves are insane today, but I had a lot of fun painting until the end when the wind just started to get to me. Like that. Thanks for watching my plein air painting process today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to let you guys know that I'm planning to cut down the quantity of videos I'm putting out and increase the quality of the videos on my YouTube channel. I have a lot of travel and live event painting coming up this year. That is another thing that's factoring into this. I don't have a lot of time to sit down and do beginner painting tutorials this year, but when I do create those tutorials, I want them to be the greatest quality that I can provide. Which over the last couple years, I've been focusing a little bit more on just getting a video out every week rather than taking all that time with the editing and the lighting and making sure everything's perfect. So I want to kind of switch up things and try to give you guys better quality art-related content. So I hope that is what you're looking for. Thanks for sticking by me through all these years. I'm still planning on keeping this channel going, just trying to cut back on how many videos I'm putting out and try to make sure I'm giving you guys better quality videos. Have a great day and happy painting!